Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Silicon Valley Arbitration and Mediation Center's YouTube channel. We are with you with a new YouTube project called ATalk, which would be on arbitration, ADR, and technology. So in this series, we will be talking with influential people in the field of arbitration, mediation, and technology. We will learn about their life paths, what their motives, and what we will try to learn from them. And we will also ask about some current developments and get their insights. So today we are with a very special person. This person is an arbitrator, a partner at a law firm, a professor, and also a president of CIArb. So our guest for our first episode is Professor Mohamed Abdel Wahab. So we will be talking with him about issues related to arbitration, ADR, and technology, but also we will try to get some insights from him. So I'm at Türkfiliz. I serve on the steering committee of Silicon Valley Arbitration and Mediation Center's Young Professionals, but I'm also a PhD researcher at the University of Antwerp Faculty of Law and Antwerp Center on Responsible AI. So I also need to give some kind of things on my mind to share with you is that this episode is very special because I was interested in this topic and I was interested in both technology and arbitration. And the one who sparked my interest most is Professor Mohamed Abdel Wahab. We won a competition and we earned a mentoring session with him. So it would be really helpful, I think, to get some insights from him to all people who are watching and interested in these fields. Hello, and thank you for accepting my request, Professor Mohamed Abdel Wahab.
Thank you so much, Ada. It's a great pleasure and a privilege to join you for this first episode, and I'm all yours.
Thank you very much. So we have kind of a format. We will first start with your career journey. So you have been deeply involved in arbitration for over 25 years, and arbitration and technology especially. So looking back, what first sparked your interest in dispute resolution, and particularly in the intersection with technology?
Thank you so much. So it's a very interesting question. Looking back at time, oh wow, 25 years have passed, even more. True. So yes, so my interest in dispute resolution was sparked initially and literally by the challenges that I have seen that people say, oh, it's demanding, every case is challenging, all this. So I was very much intrigued by the idea that, okay, if it requires analytical skills, every case unique, it must be interesting. So I was looking at the silver lining, the bright side, which is something that will keep you motivated, passionate, and interested in the work that you do for the years to come. And that was it. Now, how technology intersected with that, when I started working in dispute resolution, precisely international arbitration, the aim for everyone was more or less to be a leading practitioner in the jurisdiction they are. My hopes and aspirations were much more than that. And so I started considering what would give me an edge globally in that sense. And at the time, technology was more of a luxury rather than a necessity. And not everyone specialized in technology. Um, Different generations, their interaction with technology was limited to just maybe turning on and off the computer, or even at the time, secretaries were typing for partners, everything. So I said, okay, I'm very much interested in technology. I was at the time doing my PhD in the UK. So I started looking what would give me an edge. And I found that technology as a field was evolving. Online dispute resolution was in the nascent stages. Ethan Catch, who was considered the father of online dispute resolution, has started or actually published a book on around 1996 regarding ODR and technology and the fourth party. So I put my PhD a little bit aside and I dedicated a number of weeks and months to read everything in the field. And I said, okay, yes, I am ready. I published something, and then I got invited to join the UNECE, the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, as an expert on online dispute resolution. And since then, one thing has led to another, but technology was really through ODR my entry point to the global dispute resolution arena worldwide.
So you have broken barriers as an Egyptian and African arbitrator and arbitration practitioner. But on the other side, what were some of the biggest challenges you have faced in your career and how did you navigate them?
Yes, so I think the two biggest challenges is that one, you needed to work much harder compared to peers from the West. Secondly, and I think this is even more challenging, uh, is a matter of perception. How to break free from the shackles of restraint and be perceived as an international figure in international arbitration rather than nationally or regionally. So the idea of, okay, yeah, go to this guy for Egypt or go to this African practitioner or arbitrator, but inviting people to think that you can be part of the global group of leading practitioners was the greatest challenge. It is always tough because, to an extent, you are normally confined to a certain jurisdiction or to a certain region. So breaking free from that was the greatest challenge.
So, yeah, the next question would be, as we mentioned you in the introduction, you are the president of CIArb, but also a law professor, practicing lawyer as a partner at a firm, a highly sought after arbitrator after navigating all those challenges. But how do you balance these different roles and in what ways do they complement or reinforce each other in your professional life?
Thank you. So I know this idea of a number of hats. For me, I think the key point is to be organized, and they all define me. They motivate me, and they keep the passion sparked in me. And I think together they have all helped shaping the person I am today. Initially, when I graduated top of my class at the time over the universities in the year of my graduation, I got appointed as a junior member of the faculty. The aim was, of course, to finish my studies, contribute to the life of students, try to provide what may not have been provided to me in terms of teaching them, being close to them. So that was the first thing. Then, of course, I started immediately working in private practice, and you realize the difference. Being an academic is one thing, and private practice is another. Also, as an arbitrator, is a third thing, because effectively, if you write an award, you're not writing a book, you're not writing an article. If you write an academic piece, you're making it in the proper academic format and structure. If you are practicing, the clients they care about is a practical solution. They're not interested in theories and stuff. So how do you harness all that and bring it all together so that all the pieces of the puzzle come in one place? I think is another challenge, but I enjoy that very much. And I try very much to be switched on in terms of what role am I playing to assist those I am addressing in relation to that specific role. This has also helped me because one, it made you grounded with a solid understanding of the law and the legal principles. You've got the academic hat. It made you able to apply that to practice and find the shortest cut to an answer and to a resolution. And it also helped me academically to share with the students practical examples that keep the subject alive, interesting, and less boring compared to others.
So now it was very informative, and I think it would be really beneficial for the youth who are watching here. So we are proceeding now to a part on technology and dispute resolution, and then on artificial intelligence in arbitration. So over your career, how have you seen the technology transform arbitration and mediation practice? Because it's certainly very different in 20 years before than now.
True. I've seen a great transformation. I've lived at a time where people were simply dictating submissions to be written by their secretaries on something called typewriters. People don't know It's extremely obsolete. Then when computers, as the bulk ones with the big screens, at the time there was something called monochrome screens. So there were two colors, uh, green and orange. My gosh, it seems like a distant past. Um, and so I've seen this transforming the practice. One, the idea of generating electronic pieces of writing, communicating by emails and sending submissions online was a breakthrough at the time, even though now it sounds like, oh, that's very primitive. Um, and I think one of the greatest thing that people thought was transformative is communications and holding hearings online. At a certain time, you needed to get video conferencing with synchronized and compatible softwares and hardware at both ends. It wasn't that easy. You would not just switch on, send a link, and that works. No, it was you had video conferencing equipment that was quite expensive, and people who had it felt that like, they owned the world in terms of technology. So we've seen a gradual transformation, though I have to say, over 20 years, it seems like a lot has been achieved, if not even more. But I think one of the greatest things that I've seen transforming this effectively is the ability to conduct the whole process online, uploading documents, a paperless arbitration in a way. And I think that has been a very important transformative factor that paved the way to what is coming next, the AI wave.
Yes, so AI questions will also be coming, but before proceeding to it, could you share an example where technology made a decisive difference in an arbitration case you were involved in?
It's a very interesting question. I must say yes, there has been a number of cases. It depends on the context. As counsel, I think there are a number of cases that technology played a decisive role because, for example, in a couple of cases, we had to deal with document production requests in a very voluminous arbitration. And so to analyze and digest the requests received by the other side or go through the record to identify what is needed required the support of some softwares available. In another case that was interesting, a party has made a filing of thousands of pages in the last submission just before the hearing. So we had two options. Should we apply to postpone the hearing, or should we take a leap of faith and the risk and deal with that promptly? And so we opted for the second in the interest of our clients, even though we've objected to the tribunal. But ultimately, we were also again assisted by technology to analyze those documents, but with humans overseeing the process and looking into it, which enabled us to expedite the review, make our analysis, and obviously be prepared for the hearing. So I think that was it. In terms of an arbitrator case where technology made a difference, I think there are a number of cases. I can remember one when there was a site inspection. So you had to go to a site and you had sort of 3D imaging of certain areas that you cannot go into, which enabled you to understand the areas of disagreement between experts. Otherwise, we would have been kept in the dark and operating on the basis of no knowledge of reality. But connecting the dots and seeing how this 3D imaging of an area that you cannot go into helped us really understand the parties' positions better and even affected the decision making in terms of a certain specific claim. So I think there are areas where technology played a significant role. Another one, I must say, was a very interesting case about the methodology applied by a party in relation to a specific dispute that was a salvage dispute in the context of a very big maritime dispute. And so the idea of understanding the methodology was helped by technology and technical explanations, and in fact, technological demonstrations by the experts to show us which one was a better approach, which was actually at the crux of the dispute because one is more costly than the other. So it explained the parties' position as to why they opted for one approach compared to the other. So I think there are areas, and I could think of these as examples where technology made a difference.
So the site visits and the 3D imagery was not one of the topics that came to my mind. I was not stressed in those topics, but yeah, I also learned a lot about it. So, but now we proceed to the headliner kind of things, which also Silicon Valley Arbitration Mediation Center is also known for. Um, we issued the first AI guidelines in arbitration, and CIArb has recently followed with its own. From your perspective, what are the most important takeaways for practitioners, and what do you see as their most significant limitations or risks?
Yes, so actually, the Silicon Valley Arbitration Mediation Center issued their guidelines first, which I think is a great innovation at that end in an area that is evolving, that is changing. So, regulation and setting guidelines is not an easy thing because it's a moving target. And then the CIArb also released their AI guidelines, which I think are also excellent in that sense. But the approach, as you said, is different. I think these guidelines and the increased release of them is a welcome thing because I think the most important thing the takeaway that I think practitioners ought to think about is basically inviting everyone globally to think about the need to have guidelines and regulation for AI. I think this is the most important takeaway. It cannot just be kept without regulation and without proper guidelines. The second takeaway is the big billion-dollar question about transparency, which is whether and to what extent disclosure is or is not needed in relation to the use of AI. I know people have strong views on both camps, and they have different views in relation to whether you're talking about counsel or arbitrators. But I think bringing everyone together through these guidelines and inviting them to think about transparency in this context and about the need to regulate and the limits of regulation is key. Obviously, the issue is not the specific technology in itself, because soon enough, each technology becomes obsolete and outdated. It's more about the approach and the integration of technology in the dispute resolution process that needs careful reflection, careful analysis, and indeed welcomed regulation.
So, and now I want to proceed to recent developments. So, the AAA ICDR announced an AI arbitrator set to debut this November in documents-only construction cases and trained on more than 1,500 awards. So, I will ask about your thoughts, and do you think AI will remain primarily a tool for practitioners as it was before, or could it evolve into something more transformative, potentially reshaping the role of arbitrators themselves?
Yes, the initiative, I've heard about it and I've been following, as you know, I have an interest in technology and AI as well. So I've been following these developments. Now, of course, there are developments in other parts of the world, including China, but focused on your questions, the AAA ICDR. Yes, I'm aware of the initiative and I know that it's a new one. Effectively, I think in November it's kicking off. Um, I'm not surprised at all. I think the world is moving into the direction of becoming more and more reliant on technology and artificial intelligence. I see that the idea and the product are sold as a tool or as a sidekick to humans to assist them. But faster than we would expect, AI would transcend the role of a tool to become a rule. This was part of a keynote that I delivered, moving from tools to rules. And ruling means that they will be competing with humans. And that's why I tell the younger generation, you're no longer, or in fact, even us, you're no longer competing with each other as humans, but you're also going to compete with machines and robots. So, yes, I know many are in a state of denial that you can never replace the human element in decision making. But I think um, the challenge and the fallacy of that premise is that we tend to think that artificial intelligence has not yet reached the idea of mimicking human intelligence, and that is understood. The point is not that, and that's what I say the fallacy lies. The point is that using AI will offer a cheaper, faster option to resolve disputes. And so for many companies and entities, they would live with a machine-generated decision compared to a human or handmade decision in that sense, just because of the time and cost, even if it's flawed, even if it's not perfect. But even among us humans, decisions are not perfect. We all have our flaws in a way. But interestingly, over time, when you hit the AGI, artificial general intelligence sort of era, I think then AI would have evolved to a level of intelligence that would be definitely replacing the human element, which, the last part of your question, would reshape the role of arbitrators themselves. So today, the first step, people could be using technology as you are relying on an associate or a secretary to a tribunal, if that, again, subject to the transparency and regulatory considerations we've talked about. Gradually, it's going to develop and evolve into an entity that can take decisions, even with flaws. But in reality, that is happening no matter what others say. The question, I think, for us, and that comes the regulatory part, as I mentioned, is that there is a dire need today to regulate the use of technology to see whether we want it to go that far or not. And the question is the human desire rather than the ability of technology, because the ability will be there. It's more about what we want it to do.
So then you have talked about the competition with the robots, AI, and people, but competition is every day getting higher, and young practitioners need their way. And so we come into a part about the guidance for young practitioners. So you are a professor, you are a mentor, as I mentioned before. So I have two questions regarding that. The first would be for young arbitration practitioners aspiring to build an international profile, what skills should they prioritize as of today?
Indeed. As you mentioned, I think it's the idea is the competition is quite sore and high, and it's important for young practitioners today to find a place under the sun. And I think what they need to acquire is a set of soft and hard skills. Now, we can talk a lot about communication skills, about working hard, which I think is extremely important. But I will say this, patience has changed from becoming a virtue or simply a quality to a skill. I think with the younger generation, patience is important. Due to the fast pace of life, the approach of the younger generation to many things in life makes them less patient. And with less patience, you become easily frustrated, you become easily deterred from the approach you've taken. You become easily prone to desperation. And I think it's important that people acquire the skill of patience in terms of what they do. So being consistent in working hard, in achieving their goals, and which they will ultimately achieve is key. So I think patience is one of the most important things that I would advise the younger generation to do. Now, coupled with that, investing in a solid grounding in law. You need to have a solid grounding in law to build a proper analytical mind, intellectual capabilities, and the ability to deal with matters as they arise properly. So, with this, I think they will arm themselves with the needed skills to make it and to break into the world of international arbitration.
So, yeah, your piece of advice. So I would ask more advices, but the first advice would be the patience. So it's really important because it will take in time. Um, but but I also have another piece of advice, which would be for young practitioners, particularly those coming from less well-known jurisdictions or underrepresented backgrounds. What should they do more? So from your past, we can get some takeaways, but are there any piece of advices?
Yes. True. One common theme that I see, and I think it's important, and it's one of the lessons that I learned and has been living by it. Uh, be positive, don't victimize yourselves. Don't feel that you come from an underprivileged or underrepresented jurisdiction that one, you cannot make it, two, that you have to blame the others for not making it. I think it's important that you work on yourself, each one works on themselves in a way. And so we need to work harder. It is true that if you come from an underrepresented or underprivileged, you need to work harder because you need to work harder to become more visible. You need to work harder to require or acquire the expertise and the experience needed. But I will tell them one thing, and that applies to everyone. Know that substance lasts longer and is indeed more impactful than networking. It is important to reach out, but if you've got the substance and people know that you have the skills and what it takes, you will get instructions and you will get potentially appointments in due course. I think that is the key survival thing is ensure that you've got substance.
So I have a few questions about representation and inclusivity. And the first one would be, so as you mentioned, the minority representation is still limited. And how do you see your own role in encouraging greater inclusivity in the field?
So yes, there are a number of initiatives that we're involved in, and many of them, I mean, across the board. For example, within the Africa Academy, and as I mentioned, we've got a great set of, I call them the Seven Magnificent, working within the Africa Academy, and the executive director, Dr. Abayomi Okubuti. They are working round the clock to enable the younger generation of Africans to have access and visibility within the global community. So you have these programs where you bring Africans to London for training of 3 weeks. I think it has been extremely successful within the Africa Academy. There are other initiatives about offering them access to information and knowledge for those who are underprivileged and do not have access within Africa. The program has grown to transcend just Africa, but also to interacting with other young professionals across the globe. On another front, we've got the Racial Equality for Arbitration Lawyers, which is another great initiative globally, giving mentorship, guidance, activities. And again, this is an area where a lot of work has been done. And I think all institutions across the globe, whether it's arbitral institutions or institutions entrusted with carrying forward the international dispute resolution message, are having mentorship programs and having scholarships for young practitioners. So that's ICA, ICC, the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, all of them, they have these mentorship programs and activities that enable young professionals to meaningfully participate and be involved. There are also speaking engagements. As I mentioned, there are master's programs offered by many universities and academic institutions, even for a short period, whether in Paris, in London, in Geneva, or in other places. So I think all this, there are a lot on offer. It just requires younger colleagues to find their way and navigate their way through these initiatives in a way. At my end, I try in terms of mentoring, in terms of sharing advice, in terms of training young professionals in a way, and not confined to a specific jurisdiction or nationality. So I'm trying to do my best in that area. And whenever someone reaches out, of course, there is a busy schedule and there is sometimes difficulty to respond on the spot when you are in a hearing or in a professional engagement. But I think I'm trying to do my best to remain in touch with them. And I'm always very happy when you get these messages at the end that someone has reached a successful achievement and they share with you, oh, Professor, this I've done that, and it's feeling so good about it. I even sometimes feel better about it than themselves because you feel you have contributed meaningfully to the life of someone else.
So it's great that you have mentioned the things you have done, the institutions that are doing, individuals are doing by themselves. But when we look at the bird eye, what systemic changes do you think are needed to open more pathways for arbitrators from underrepresented regions or backgrounds?
So yes, I think there is a lot to be done. I will simply say this. The world, and rightly so, has been focused on gender-based initiatives, and a leap and progress has been made. And so I think we can learn a lot from gender-based initiatives and replicate that success for racial, ethnic minorities, and culturally, let's say, underrepresented groups in a way. So if we now take all the shades of diversity and inclusion together, and replicate the success of the gender-based initiative, I think we can do and achieve a lot. And I think everyone is now starting to do that. That is not at all an invitation to downplay the importance of continuing to do great things in relation to gender. Absolutely not. One should continue to do that, but I think we should also replicate that, and we have the ability to move in different directions at the same time, bearing in mind that the ultimate goal is one, even though whether it's gender, racial, culture, age, what professional diversity even, because this field is not confined to lawyers. You can have people with non-law degrees. I think it's important to have equal opportunity to everyone, with the very important condition that we're talking about qualified people. Um, the idea of inclusion and diversity is not intended um, to compromise on quality. It's intended to boost quality and to ensure that those who've got substance and quality have access to the global market.
Like basketball coach Zalko Obradovic, who was in his EuroLeague championship, mentioned a thing. So I don't look at my basketball players' passports, but how well they play basketball. In my view, it's we should get some also guidance from the best coach in the European basketball. And in arbitration, it would be likely to be like it. So the best arbitration practitioners be on the field. So the next thing is about future. So we have mentioned about systemic changes, what we are doing, how was it 25 years ago? But if we were to fast forward 10 years or more, how do you envision the relationship between technology and arbitration or mediation evolving?
Technology taking over, as simple as this, whether we like it or not. So today, if you look at it, we're looking at various tools that can be integrated into the arbitration process to assist with a more efficient and cost-effective arbitration. In less than 10 years, it's going to be technology based and fitting whatever remains, the remnants of the current practice of arbitration, to fit in the what is already going to be cast in stone as a technology based process with arbitration fitting into it. I know this may be hard to envision for many, but with technologies like the blockchain, and if you apply also artificial intelligence to it, you will actually be aware that you will have a technology-based process where arbitration would fit into it rather than the other way around.
So when we look at the for the future, so for the economies, it will cut budgets and technology will be taking over, as you said. But it also can come with opportunities to the newcomers, or would it be lots of risks to them rather than opportunities in the end? How would you consider the biggest opportunities and biggest risks for the newcomers to the arbitration and technology field?
Absolutely. So when you roll out a new technology, or basically a rule of life is that everything has an opportunity and a risk, an upside and a downside, and technology is no different. And I think with AI, one of the great opportunities is one, you will have new fields of activities. So even though AI may replace humans, and there are many studies conducted to say that that will affect jobs, but it will also create new streams of jobs. It will create new disputes. There will be a new host of disputes across the board relating the use of AI and technology. It will even transform our perception of law generally, because today legal systems look at law in relation to humans and things. In time, that may be changed in light of that, which will again change our view of the law generally. And with that in mind, there are, as I mentioned, opportunities about new businesses, new activities, new stream of disputes. All these count as more or less opportunities depending on the area of work you're in. But with that, there are also risks. And I think the biggest risk is ensuring that technology and AI does not take over to the extent that it becomes an existential crisis to humans in that sense. So I think the role of the human resolver or the role of humans generally will need to be carefully considered. We see that not just in our field, but even in the medical field. Robots and artificial intelligence could in time, in fact now, could be able to do operations and operate. Cooking, so they may also be able to plead cases. They may be also, you may hire an AI expert. If that happens, then you will also have an AI arbitrator in that sense. And so in reality, the risk is really undermining the human element. So moving from literally an inclination to a recline to an ultimate demise is the greatest risk. We have to ensure that at the end of the day, for the benefit of all humanity, that AI continues to be used to serve the greater interests of societies and humanity, but at the same time, ensuring that humans remain at the forefront and at the leading area of all fields. The only thing that I would also warn against as a huge risk is that if we become increasingly reliant on I hope that that would not affect our intellectual capabilities in a way, because one needs to continue to practice their skills in drafting, in thinking, in doing things. If you become extremely reliant on something, this will undermine your abilities for the generations to come.
Yeah, so we looked at the past, future, so it's very kind of utopic can be, but also a dystopic, and we need to decide as humanity what we will look. And us, we will have lots of roles in here, and we will, as the young practitioners and professionals, we will see much more. So I hope the future will be better, and we construct the future better by learning experts and mentors like you. And before we wrap up, I would like to do a quick rapid fire round. And for this section, one or very few words only, please. So, Cairo,
Magical,
Manchester,
memorable,
United or City,
united out of loyalty.
Mohamed Salah,
The football player, legendary, I have to say, and a clear example of showing that discipline can take you so far.
favorite Egyptian food.
That would be the Egyptian moussaka,
We
because there
also
is
have
Greek
similar, yeah,
moussaka, which is
Turkish
also
moussaka,
lovely,
Greeks also
and
have.
Turkish moussaka, but the Egyptian one is also very nice.
And the last is the legal of this part, ODR.
ODR, to me, it's my lucky charm, my wild card entry into the world of dispute resolution.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I hope you enjoyed this session. So we conclude the first episode of ATalk. So see you in the second episode of ATalk with another influential people in the field of arbitration technology. Bye.